Hey there, deep divers. Ready to crack open a can of mystery?
Oh, are we talking kombucha?
You got it.
Hmm.
That fizzy fermented drink that's become a health craze.
Mm.
But have you ever stopped to wonder what's really happening in that bottle?
It's pretty wild when you think about it. It's basically a colony of bacteria and yeast just vibing in sweet tea.
Right, and yet it's touted as this miracle cure for everything from gut health to liver detox. Today, we're going to separate the science from the hype.
Definitely. There's a lot to unpack.
Totally. But before we get into how it works, I've got to ask, where did this stuff even come from? Kombucha sounds Japanese.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But the origins are, well, murky.
Really?
Yeah.
Spill the tea. What are the theories?
Well, some believe it did actually originate in Japan. Kombu supposedly means kelp, and sha means tea.
Kelp tea.
Yeah, the idea is maybe kelp was once brewed into a tea, and that's where the kombucha culture was first placed.
Interesting. But not sure I'd be lining up for a kelp tea latte.
Me neither. Then there's the story of the Manchurian mushroom, this supposed kombucha culture that was smuggled out of China.
Sounds like something out of a spy movie.
Right. Bribes, daring escapes, you name it. But here's the thing. There's no real proof of this ancient cure in Chinese texts.
Huh. So lots of folklore, but not much hard evidence.
Exactly. Some researchers think teak kvass in Russia might be a link. It means acid tea, and Russia does have a history with fermented drinks.
I see. So it's possible kombucha was just a different type of fermented drink that evolved over time.
That's one theory. And then there's the idea that kombucha is simply a vinegar culture that's been passed down for generations.
So it could be a super old tradition. We just don't know for sure. Pretty cool. But how does this mysterious stuff actually work? How do we get from tea and sugar to a drink that's supposed to be good for us?
All right, now this is where it gets interesting. Think of that kombucha culture, the ESCO-Y symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, as a tiny little factory.
Oh, I like where this is going.
The sugar in the tea is the raw material. It's the fuel that keeps the factory running.
So I'm picturing like tiny assembly lines, microscopic forklifts moving sugar around.
Pretty much. Now, within this factory, you've got two main divisions, the yeast division and the bacteria division.
Ooh, division of labor. Very efficient. What are they each in charge of?
Well, the yeast division is all about energy. It takes that glucose from the sugar and churns out carbon dioxide.
That's what gives kombucha its fizz.
Exactly. Along with some ethanol, organic acids, and even more yeast cells.
So the yeast division is like the engine room, powering everything up.
You got it. Now, bacteria division, they're the multitaskers. First, they grab lactic acid and use it to make lactobacilli.
The good gut bacteria we hear so much about.
Yep, that's them. And their second job is to break down more sugar, this time to create acetic acid.
Acetic acid, you mean?
Vinegar. That's what gives kombucha that tangy flavor.
Wait, so the tartness is vinegar. Mind blown.
Yep, it's all vinegar. And that vinegar, along with the other acids produced during fermentation, are thought to have a special connection with the liver.
Okay, so we've got probiotics for the gut, something potentially good for our liver. This kombucha factory is getting more and more impressive. But you mentioned other acids. What are those, and do they have special benefits too?
They absolutely do. Each one brings something different to the party. So first up, you've got citric acid, like in citrus fruits.
Makes sense.
It's a potent antioxidant and plays a key role in how our body produces energy.
So that's why some people feel that energy boost after drinking kombucha.
Could be. Then you've got malic acid, which you find in apples. Research suggests that it might help the liver get rid of toxins.
Detoxifying malic acid.
And it might even help ease muscle soreness. Next up, we've got oxalic acid, which is important for energy production. But here's the catch.
Oh no, there's a catch.
Too much of it can bind to calcium and can actually lead to kidney stones. It's a good reminder that balance is important.
Duly noted. Moderation in all things, right? What about the rest?
Well, there's lactic acid, good for digestion, and even a source of energy for the liver. Then there's gluconic acid. Early research hints it might help manage candida overgrowth.
Interesting.
However, kombucha is not recommended for people with candida because of the yeast it contains.
Right, because it could make it worse.
Exactly. It's always best to check with the doctor before adding something new to your diet, especially if you have any underlying health conditions.
Absolutely. Informed decisions are key.
And finally, we have glucuronic acid. This one is a powerhouse when it comes to liver detoxification.
Really? Tell me more.
It's especially good at removing harmful substances like pesticides and plastics.
Wow, glucuronic acid, the cleanup crew for our modern world. So we've got this incredible mix of acids, each with its own superpower, working together to potentially support our health. But how does kombucha actually affect the overall balance in our bodies? I've heard a lot about pH and it's important.
That's a great question. And it brings us to a crucial aspect of kombucha's potential benefits, its impact on pH levels. Think of pH as a delicate dance between acidity and alkalinity, always in motion, especially during digestion.
Okay, a dance. I'm intrigued.
Picture a ballroom with two laid dancers. Alkalinity is the elegant prima ballerina, and acidity, her charming partner.
I love it already.
Their intricate steps represent the ever-changing pH levels in our bodies.
Okay, so walk me through this pH ballet.
In Act 1, we have a peaceful village scene. This represents a neutral pH. The dancers are moving gracefully, forming temporary bonds, but not getting too attached.
Sounds lovely, but I have a feeling things are about to get a little more dramatic.
You got it. In Act 2, a mysterious figure enters. The femme fatale, acidity. She's alluring, powerful, and she steals all the male partners, creating a more acidic environment.
Oh, sounds like trouble's brewing. What happens next?
Don't worry, there's hope. In Act 3, wise elders arrive, representing buffers. They offer alternative partners mineral salts to the femme fatale, neutralizing her power and restoring balance to the dance floor.
So the buffers are like the peacekeepers, making sure things don't get too out of hand.
Exactly. And finally, in Act 4, balance is restored, the music swells, the dance continues, a reflection of the body's incredible ability to regulate pH.
That's such a brilliant way to visualize it. But how does this pH dance relate to our everyday lives? And where does kombucha fit into the picture?
Well, think about the typical modern diet, often loaded with processed foods, sugar, and unhealthy fats. Those all contribute to a more acidic internal environment, like that femme fatale taking over the dance floor.
Right, and I imagine stress doesn't help either.
You're telling me stress hormones are like little acid bombs going off in our bodies, disrupting that delicate pH balance. But here's the good news. Our bodies have ways of dealing with this.
Oh, good. Like
Right.
what?
We breathe out carbon dioxide, which is acidic, and we get rid of excess acids through urine and sweat. And then, of course, we have those wise elders, the buffers, helping to neutralize the acid onslaught.
So it's like a constant balancing act going on inside us.
Exactly. And here's where kombucha comes in. With its unique blend of organic acids and probiotics, it might actually support both sides of that pH equation.
Really? How so?
Remember those organic acids we talked about? They can actually stimulate the liver to detoxify, helping to remove excess acid from the body.
So kombucha is like a personal trainer for our liver, encouraging it to step up its detox game.
You could say that. And at the same time, those acids can also contribute to the body's buffering system, helping to neutralize excess acid in the bloodstream.
So it's like kombucha is providing backup dancers for both the prima ballerina and the femme fatale, making sure the pH dance stays harmonious.
That's a great way to put it. But to really get how kombucha supports this delicate balance, we need to zoom in on one very important organ, the liver.
All right, let's give the liver its due.
It's a fascinating organ, often overlooked, but absolutely essential for overall health. It's like a busy city, working nonstop to keep our bodies running smoothly.
I'm all ears. Tell me more about this incredible liver city.
Okay, picture this. You've got the master chemist department. That's responsible for breaking down proteins, fats, and carbs into usable energy. Then there's the supply office, which stores essential vitamins and minerals, ready to go when needed.
So the liver has its own pantry and pharmacy.
Pretty much. And we can't forget the fuel storage facility, which stores sugars for when our blood sugar drops. But maybe most important of all is the detoxification powerhouse, constantly filtering our blood and removing harmful substances.
Wow, that's a lot of responsibility. I'm starting to see why the liver is so important,
Then-
but I imagine our modern lifestyles put a lot of strain on it, right?
Unfortunately, yeah. Stress, processed foods, environmental toxins, they all bombard the liver. It's like traffic jams and pollution clogging up our bustling city.
So what happens when the liver gets overloaded?
It can lead to what's called liver dysfunction. And the signs can be surprising. Digestive issues, fatigue, skin problems, mood swings, you name it.
I never would have guessed that some of those things could be linked to the liver.
It's true. And that's why supporting liver health is so crucial.
So how does kombucha come to the rescue in all of this?
Well, remember those organic acids we talked about? They can actually stimulate the liver's detoxification pathways so it can flush out toxins more efficiently.
So like sending in a cleaning crew to tidy up that overworked liver city.
Precisely. And when the liver is working at its best, it can maintain that delicate pH balance we were talking about earlier.
It all connects. This is so fascinating. I'm starting to see why kombuchas has become such a popular drink.
But it's important to remember it's not a magic bullet. It's just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to overall health and well-being.
Right, there's no substitute for a healthy lifestyle. But it sounds like kombucha can be a valuable addition to a holistic approach to wellness. Speaking of holistic health, kombucha also has a curious connection to energy levels. Some people report feeling more energized after drinking it.
That's right. It's a curious thing, isn't it? And it might tie back to a special enzyme produced by the liver, alkaline phosphatase.
Alkaline phosphatase. That rings a bell. Didn't we touch on that when we were discussing the energy levels of children and pregnant women?
Exactly. We'll explore that connection further after a quick break. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
We're unraveling that energy enigma.
You know that little pep in your step some folks get after sipping kombucha.
Right. You mentioned alkaline phosphatase. How is that linked to the bursts of energy we see in kids and pregnant women?
Well, researchers noticed that this alkaline phosphatase, the levels are just naturally higher during those times, phases of growth and all that.
So they naturally dip as we hit adulthood. Is that why we're all reaching for that second cup of coffee? Could be. Now here's what's interesting. Some think kombucha, because of how it helps the liver, might actually influence how active this alkaline phosphatase is.
Hold on. So by helping our liver with kombucha, we could, boost our energy levels. I'm a bit skeptical. Is there really a connection?
More research is definitely needed, but it's a fascinating theory. Think about it this way. What if kombucha is giving our liver a tune-up, helping it work better, and that somehow impacts this enzyme that's linked to energy?
Okay, yeah, I can see how that might be possible. But shifting gears a bit, I'm curious about, the history of fermentation. Where does kombucha fit into all of that?
Fermentation, a tale as old as time. We're talking thousands of years, going way back.
Wow, really? Tell me more. I love a good history lesson, especially when it involves food.
Imagine yourself 10,000 years ago in a Neolithic village. Our ancestors, they stumbled upon fermentation by accident.
I'm picturing someone leaving grapes out in the sun a little too long.
And bam, wine. Or maybe some forgotten barley gruel led to beer.
So our ancestors were the original accidental brewers.
Exactly. And from there, it was a short jump to leavened bread, fermented dairy, a whole world of culinary creations, all thanks to those tiny helpers, yeast and bacteria.
It's amazing how these microorganisms have shaped human history and culture. Makes you appreciate the power of nature,
Absolutely. And kombucha is a great example of how fermentation is still evolving, still finding new expressions in different cultures all over the world.
But there's more to it than just history and science, right? There's an art to making kombucha, that care and attention that goes into, growing the SCOBY and brewing it just right. I gotta admit, I'm a little intimidated by the whole process.
I get it. It can seem daunting, but it's honestly not that complicated once you get the hang of it. Plus, making your own kombucha at home is super rewarding.
Okay, you've convinced me. I'm ready to try. So where do I begin? What do I need for this kombucha brewing adventure?
Well, first things first, you'll need a kombucha culture. It's also called a STOBY, which stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast.
Right, the SCOBY, that, gelatinous pancake thing.
Yep, that's it. You can get one from a friend who brews or buy one online. You'll need a big glass jar, something breathable to cover it, a rubber band, and, of course, your ingredients: water, sugar, and tea.
Got it. SCOBY House jar, ingredients, check. What's next?
You'll brew some strong tea, black or green works best, let it cool down completely, and then stir in the sugar until it dissolves. This sweet tea is like a feast for your SQ-ho.
Setting the table for our little microbial friends.
Exactly. Then, gently add your SQV to the tea, along with some starter liquid from a previous batch. Cover the jar, secure it with the rubber band, and find a nice, warm, dark spot for it to do its thing.
Creating a cozy little incubator for our kombucha culture to thrive.
You got it. And now, the hard part, waiting. It usually takes about a week, but it can vary depending on the temperature and how strong your starter culture is.
A week of patiently watching those bubbles form and that tangy smell developing, like a science experiment in my kitchen. Any pitfalls a newbie kombucha brewer should watch out for?
Great question. One of the most important things is cleanliness. Got to prevent contamination. Wash your hands, your equipment, everything, before you touch the SCOBY or your brew.
Hygiene is key. Got it. Anything else?
Temperature is also important. Kombucha likes it between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Too cold and it slows down. Too hot, you risk killing off those beneficial bacteria and yeast.
Finding that Goldilocks zone for kombucha. Not too hot, not too cold.
Exactly. And speaking of things that can go wrong, gotta watch out for mold.
Mold. Oh, that doesn't sound good. How do we know if our kombucha's gone bad?
Mold usually looks like fuzzy patches, could be black, green, yellow on the surface of the XWY or in the brew, and you'll definitely smell it.
Moldy kombucha. Hard pass. What should we do if we see something suspicious?
If you see any mold, toss the whole batch, SKOBO included, and start fresh with a new culture. Better safe than sorry.
Safety first when it comes to fermentation. Now, you mentioned earlier that kombucha is not for everyone. Who should avoid it?
A really good point. While kombucha is usually safe for most adults, some folks should be cautious or skip it altogether.
Okay, I'm listening. Who are we talking about here?
Anyone with a compromised immune system should definitely talk to their doctor first. Those live bacteria and yeast, while good for many, can be risky for those with weaker immunity.
Makes sense.
Who else? Pregnant or breastfeeding women should also check with their doctor. There's not a ton of research on kombucha during those times, so better to err on the side of caution.
Good advice. Any other potential downsides or risks we should know about?
Well, as with most things, moderation is key. Too much kombucha might lead to some, shall we say, digestive discomfort.
Like what? What kind of problems are we talking about?
Bloating, gas, diarrhea, that sort of thing. It's probably due to all those probiotics and yeast.
Like overdoing it on the good gut bugs. Too much of a good thing.
Exactly. And since kombucha is acidic, too much could potentially mess with tooth enamel. Rinsing with water afterwards can help.
Good to know. What about people with Candida overgrowth? We talked about that briefly earlier.
Right. Kombucha is generally not recommended if you have Candida overgrowth. The yeast in kombucha could actually make things worse.
So even though it has those good bacteria, the yeast makes it a no-go for those folks.
Precisely. It all comes down to understanding your own health and making smart choices.
Glad we covered that.
Yeah.
Important to have all the facts before diving into the world of kombucha. But I gotta ask, what are some, lesser-known facts about kombucha, things that might surprise our listeners?
Ooh, fun question. One thing that always blows my mind is the sheer variety of yeast and bacteria that can exist in a kombucha culture.
It's like a little world in a jar.
Right. Each kombucha is a unique mix of microorganisms, and it can change based on where it's from, the type of tea used, even how it's brewed.
So every batch of kombucha is like a fingerprint reflecting its own little community of microbes. That's so cool. What else have you found in your kombucha explorations?
Another interesting thing is that kombucha might have uses beyond just being a tasty drink. Researchers are looking into its potential in bioremediation.
Bioremediation. What's that?
Basically using living things to clean up pollutants. Some studies suggest kombucha cultures could actually break down harmful stuff like dyes and pesticides.
Wait, so kombucha could help clean up the environment? That's amazing.
It's an area with a lot of potential, for sure, and it just shows how incredibly versatile these microbial communities are.
This is incredible. We've learned so much today, from the origins of kombucha and how fermentation works, to its potential health benefits, and even its possible role in cleaning up the environment.
It's been quite a journey. Really highlights how interconnected our health, our environment, and the world of microbes truly are.
Well said. This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of kombucha.
Glad you enjoyed it.
And now it's time to wrap things up and leave our listeners with some final thoughts.
Sounds good. What do you have in mind?
As we wrap up our kombucha deep dive, I'm honestly kind of amazed at how much we've learned.
It really is remarkable, isn't it? Such a simple drink, but the impact it can have on our bodies, maybe even the environment, it's incredible.
We've gone from those mysterious origin stories and the inner workings of that kombucha factory to the delicate dance of pH and even that intriguing connection to energy levels.
Right, and we've talked about those potential benefits for gut health and liver function, but also how important it is to not overdo it and to be aware of any potential risks.
And who could forget about the possibilities of kombucha in bioremediation, using those tiny microbes to help clean up the environment.
Nature is full of surprises, isn't it? Fermentation is just one example of how powerful it can be.
But, beyond all the science and history, what really strikes me about kombucha is how it connects to a more mindful way of life.
I totally agree. It's like it encourages you to slow down, pay attention to what you're putting into your body, and reconnect with those natural processes that keep us going.
It's a good reminder that health isn't just about quick fixes or artificial solutions. It's about finding that balance, nurturing a healthy relationship with ourselves and with the world around us.
It's true. Kombucha, it's like this tiny ecosystem in a jar, a whole community of microorganisms working together to create something amazing.
And it makes you realize we're part of that interconnected web of life, too. Nature has so much power to support our well-being.
Absolutely. So let's raise a glass of kombucha to the wisdom of those ancient traditions, the wonders of modern science, and to all those possibilities that exist within a single scoop of Y.
Cheers to that. And to all you deep divers out there, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep discovering the amazing world of fermented foods.
Happy fermenting, everyone.
And happy deep diving.